Sure. Okay. Okay, so hello, good morning, everybody, and welcome to this webinar called the Psychometrics and the Art of Team Dynamics. My name is Pádraig Berry, and I'm the CEO of TTI Success Insights here in Ireland. And on behalf of Caroline Smith, Breda Flood and myself, I'd like to welcome you. Now we have a large number of people registered for this webinar. So I have everybody muted and I have your videos turned off. I hope that's okay with you. And if you have questions, and I hope you have lots of questions, we love questions, please use the chat box and address the questions to Caroline Smith. And that way she will moderate the questions and we'll deal with them at the end. So our objective here today is to show you how three very different people got together to collaborate, to create this webinar, number one, and to create the ESP program that we're going to be using as a case study today. Our second objective is to introduce you to the sciences of behaviors and driving forces. These are the two sciences we used in the webinar.
Oh my goodness, sorry.
And the third objective is to show you the ESP program.
I was just waiting here.
Now, can we hold just a moment? I see here, I had everybody muted, and for some reason other people are unmuted. Caroline, can you check there and make sure that everybody is muted?
I will. I think we're all muted now, Pádraig. If you could just spotlight me from your screen, that'd be great.
Yeah, make sure everybody's muted, and ideally their videos should be turned off as well. For some reason, I see videos on here as well. So, so the objectives were to show you the three different people and how we work together, to introduce you to the two sciences, behaviors and driving forces, and to show you the ESP program itself and how we used it to improve team dynamics. Now we use psychometrics to improve team dynamics. So let me start by introducing our guest speakers. And Breda Flood is a qualified trainer, a business executive and career coach, a mediator, and a certified analyst in all the TTI sciences. She's currently the Learning and Development Operations Manager at ICOS SkillNet. And she has a wide range of experience, having previously worked in advertising, event management, marketing, and finance. That's a broad range for sure, Breda. In Ireland, the UK, and South Africa. I didn't know you'd worked in South Africa. That's new to me. Yeah. Breda tells me she's motivated. I love this. Motivated by facilitating people to bring about positive change in their lives. So welcome, Breda.
Thank you, Pádraig. Hello, everybody. I'm really looking forward to today.
Yeah,
Thank
great.
you.
Yeah, good to have you with us. Caroline is a team and executive coach. Again, she's certified in all the TTI Success Insights tools. She's a consultant and a trainer and an ACA member of the International Coaching Federation. With over 20 years experience working in professional services, banking and public sector roles, this is really good, you're going to like this. She captions her career to date as having guided and supported people during their best moments and during the most challenging times. I really like that. I think it's great, Caroline. So welcome, Caroline.
Thanks very much, Pádraig. Delighted to be here.
Yeah, great. So let's kick off. Let's get started. Before we actually get into the detail of this webinar, I'd like you to imagine something. I want you to imagine a dating site. And all you have to go on are the three photographs there in front of you. Now, you can see that I'm a man and Breda and Caroline are women. And you can say, well, I think they're attractive or I think they're ugly. You can form your own view. But it's really not an awful lot of information to go on. And while they do say that on dating sites, the 3 most important things on your profile are your photo, and your photo, I think we'll all agree that that's not a really solid basis for a relationship. All we're really talking about here is preference for gender and physical appearance. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we had some more information? For example, wouldn't it be nice to know what this person valued? What was important to them? What caused them to engage and disengage? And to understand if I have the same values, the same things are important to me. Wouldn't it be interesting to know how the person would behave in different circumstances, how we would communicate and avoid misunderstandings and miscommunications? Wouldn't it be interesting to know where we clash and so on? In other words, wouldn't it be interesting to have a little bit more information to allow us to have a better interaction and a better relationship? And believe it or not, there are actually dating sites that try to answer some of these questions. eHarmony, for example, used all our tools for years, all our psychometrics. Elite Singles use the Big 5. So there are sites out there trying to understand a little bit more about you than do you just enjoy a glass of red wine, or are you a white wine person? Try and dig a little bit deeper. What we're looking at on this slide is Carl-Anne, Breda, and my profiles, our behavior and motivational profiles. How we like to deal with problems and challenges, how we like to deal with people and contacts, how we like to deal with pace and consistency, and how we like to deal with procedures and constraints. So our behaviors, how we like to do things, and our driving force or motivators, why we do what we do, what engages, what disengages, what excites us, and what are the filters that we use to see things and work through things. So, these are the profiles of the 3 of us. And the question is there is, I'll be asking you at the end, I'll have a little poll at the end. So when we've completed the workshop or the webinar, I'll be asking you to guess who's who, which of those profiles up there. You'll understand them a little bit better at the end. Which of those profiles is Carl-Anne, which is Breda, and which is me? Because clearly they're not the photographs we have beside them. I've mixed them up, and we'll see. So the first one there, the first profile we're looking up there. So if you look at that profile, that behavior and motivational profile, this is someone who is outgoing. They're people focused, big picture, the big picture thinker. Not great on the detail, but they're flexible. With the rules, they're a pioneer. They're full of new ideas, enthusiasm, and energy. This person is really engaged by new ideas and new ways of doing things to work collaboratively to help others. The second profile here, this one here in the middle, well, this person is a person who likes routine in their work. They like rhythm. They engage well with people, but they're cautious in their approach to problems and challenges. They value working with people who can help them achieve recognition and freedom in their lives. And the third profile down here, this one down here, well, this person leans into problems and challenges and they move quickly. They value control over their destiny by working with people in ways that work to achieve a return on their time, energy, and money. So these are 3 quite different profiles. And of course, Carl-Anne, Breda, and myself are quite different people. So it'll be interesting to see if at the end of it, can you guess which one is which? Remember, when it comes to relationships, personal and professional, this kind of information is invaluable. It really enhances individual and team performance. And as we work through even creating this webinar, never mind working on the Esp Program, which was a big project, this was a small project, and we had our stress and strains, we had our moments, we had our little conflicts, whatever. But the difference, of course, was we understood them, we knew what was going on, we could take a breath, we could step back, and we could reposition and go again. So let's talk about the outline of the webinar, what we're going to cover today. We're going to, the background of the team program. So we're going to have a talk about that. So Breda is going to walk us through how the program, she's the creative genius here, how she came up with this program and how it actually happened. I'm going to talk a little bit about development and delivery of the program. Carl-Anne, who did all the coaching on it, we'll talk about that element. We'll discuss how the program actually went, the feedback from clients, and I have a little video clip, one client talking, and then let's have a summary and a wrap up, and then we'll have a Q&A. So Breda, I'm gonna launch over to you, Breda, and as I said there a moment ago, you were the creative genius behind this. And maybe you talk a little bit to your style. So explain to us, how did this ESP program, how this idea come to you, how the program developed, so people can experience your process and see the style in action, if you wish, as you describe this. So the floor is yours, or virtual floor at least, Breda.
Thanks very much. So the background to the ESP program, it all started with the SkillNet Ireland COVID-19 Support Fund. And this fund was set up with the aim to support businesses in addressing the challenges brought about by the pandemic. This was in the early days of the pandemic, and this was to be achieved through training initiatives funded at 100%. My organization is ICOS SkillNet, and we applied and we were successful in gaining the funding. So I was thinking about how to use this fund, and part of my role at ICOS SkillNet is developing new training programs. So an obvious challenge to me at the time was the whole area of remote working.
Right. I
think we're all fairly comfortable now meeting in the virtual space, but back then it was a disconcerting experience, I think, for all.
Yeah, you had personal experience of this, Breda, didn't you, in your own organization?
Yes, which I will speak to. I was thinking about the impact, particularly that this was having on teams. Teams who are used to face-to-face communication, and that they had to suddenly adapt to a different style of communication. And Park, your slide ahead.
Yeah.
Park's moving my slides. So they had to adapt to a very different style of communication, and with not having very much time to adapt, I imagine there'd be a lack of awareness of individual needs in this situation. And I thought a possible solution would be to gain an understanding of the impact that remote working was having on themselves, and also having on their team members. Thanks, Porrick. Next slide.
Yeah. Thanks, Breda.
Okay.
The finger, what they say, faster than the speed of dark.
So as Porrick said, I had personal experience of this. I'm a member of a team of 3, the ICOS Learning and Development team. We are colleagues who get on very well together as a team. I will say, though, that when we were sent home in March 2020, we each responded in very different ways to this very stressful circumstance. I know now with hindsight that we were responding from our very different disc styles. I mean, that was obvious. So I'm an outgoing I, so I've given that away already. I'm an outgoing I. So for me, communicating with people on a daily basis is really important. Yeah. And at that time, I felt there was a lack of communication, and I was noticing the negative impact that was having on me. For another one of my colleagues, who's a steady S. So for this person, financial security is really important for the steady S. So this person was very much focused on risk management. This is a real fear for a steady S to lose financial security. My other colleague is a precise C. And for this person, and I've spoken to this person about it, it was the challenge of suddenly being isolated from the team and being unable to discuss work face-to-face, which is a preferred style for a precise C. So we were all experiencing different challenges, and at that time we were unaware of each other's styles. So I was thinking that it followed that other teams would be experiencing similar challenges, and I was thinking about how to assist them in this scary and unprecedented time. I'd recently qualified through TTI in their various sciences, and I was really keen to put my knowledge into practice. So I decided to draw my knowledge of DISC and 12 driving forces, because I knew these 2 sciences were particularly useful for when working with teams. So I wanted to put together an idea for teams working remotely. And so I put together the bones of an idea, not that great with detail, but I put together the bones of an idea with a view to creating cohesiveness in teams at a time that I thought the teams were experiencing fragmentation. Right. So I contacted Porrick at TTI to ask him to work with me, partner with me to put flesh on the ideas, and he agreed.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a great experience. I can say that for straight. Go ahead.
Yeah,
continue.
Both really enjoyed it. Yeah. So after many months of work and several iterations, I can tell you a lot of back and forth with us, we came up with the 4 pillars of a training program, which you'll see there were understanding myself, understanding my colleagues, understanding who we are as a team, and understanding how we work remotely.
Yeah, very good.
So, yeah, and so the title I came up with was Enhancing Synergy and Performance for Distributed Teams. I think initially it was during COVID-19 and beyond, very futuristic. We had to add the COVID-19 because we were drawing from the SkillNet Ireland COVID-19 fund, and thank you SkillNet Ireland. And the beyond was that we could see that this program had traction and hopefully would go on over the years beyond COVID-19, because it was good for teams at any time. This program was used for teams at any time. So the next step was to pilot the program, which we did with our team, the Learning and Development team. We really enjoyed it, found it really useful and informative. And I will say it has definitely improved team dynamics. So we now understand each other's DISC and driving forces, and we can adapt to each other's behaviors and motivators. I will say it's an ongoing process. It's an ongoing practice. It's a lose it or use it scenario, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was a great experience actually doing it. I mean, we all learned. I mean, the program was redesigned actually 2 or 3 times probably as we went through that process. It was a great learning experience, and it's one I'd recommend to people in general. If you can trial a program like that with somebody who's actually knowledgeable, who understands what you're doing, it's really helpful, because you were very knowledgeable. And Billy as well was also certified and trained in the sciences. You'd all done them, and so you were all very, very knowledgeable. It was very, very helpful. But so then what happened? You went and you promoted the program.
Yeah, so the next step was promotion of the program, and 5 of our large cooperative members took it up gladly. And it was delivered very successfully by Porrick and his team of coaches, and 2 very different teams: senior leadership team, general management team, finance team, operations team, retail team. And the feedback was really good. And I will say, I thought that it offered a solution to an unexpressed need. And people really enjoyed learning about themselves, as they always do, and their team members, and had fun taking part at a time when fun was certainly lacking back then. And it continues to roll out. It has done this year, and we have bookings already for next year. So that's the background.
No, thanks for that, really. Yeah, I mean, it was interesting, again, just to go back to what this webinar is all about. It was interesting to see the different people. So Breda being a particular kind of person, me being a particular kind of person, Carl-Anne being a particular kind of person. By particular kind, what I mean is behavioural driving forces, behavioural motivators. And to see how we all added value differently. And one of the big parts of the program we'll be talking about in a while was this idea of helping people understand the value they bring. What is the value they bring? And I think the 3 of us learned really clearly, actually, in a very collaborative effort, the value that we all brought to the team. And so that was a great experience, I think, for all of us, a great learning experience for all of us as trainers and coaches and whatever. The actual, as I say, the course that we developed, this ESP program, Enhancing Synergy Performance for Distributed Teams during COVID-19, and I took out the and beyond there, Breda, you'll be happy to see. But so we just call it the ESP, guys. But the course objectives were to enhance performance while working in a distributed way. So the idea was that people were out there working distributed, working remotely, and we wanted to give them a common language of understanding so they could communicate and work more effectively. And we also wanted to help them understand the concepts of diversity and how they could leverage this diversity, play to their individual strengths. And we used a lot of examples in the program. We were actually going through it around, needing different styles, needing different people. And then the last one was just to generally improve communications and team cohesiveness. The outcomes we were looking for, what we wanted the participants to leave the program with, well, I want them to gain an insight. And this, I think, is the single most important thing, without going down into the EQ here, but self-awareness is the foundation of everything. We all know this. Nothing else really matters. If you don't have self-awareness, everything else you struggle. And so to gain insights into their own and their colleagues' profiles and the makeup of the team. So understand themselves, understand others, and make up the team, have a better understanding of the value that they and their colleagues brought to the team, to actually honor the difference, to respect and honor the difference, and then to understand how to work and communicate effectively. Really important, we want them to develop coping strategies. So going back to what Breda was saying about the stress and strains, the different types experience, we wanted the people to develop coping strategies and for working in a distributed way, and indeed just working in general. So we did a lot about stress. We talked a lot about stress and how to manage stress for different styles, behaviors and driving force and so on. And then learn how to support their other team members. How could they work with team members to support them in this new world that we were living in? The tools I said earlier, the tools we used were DISC behaviors and driving forces motivators. and a range of exercises, so behavioral and motivational discovery exercises for individual and group sessions. The actual steps in the program, just again, so you see them very quickly. The first one was people completed a talent insights assessment, i.e. behaviors and driving forces, and they carried out a self-debrief. And the idea there was to get them up to speed so they started an understanding of the assessment and had teased out, if you wish, particular issues there that they wanted to raise. Then they had a debriefing session, a one-on-one 90-minute debriefing session with Carl-Anne and indeed also with Tricia from Leap Leadership. And they were the two people who worked on this particular program, two coaches worked on this program. And then we had 3 virtual classroom sessions. One was called Dynamic Communications, where we looked at the DISC styles and how to recognize and communicate effectively with people, and group exercise and little case studies around that to embed learning. And then we had another one called Leveraging Your Team. And the idea there was very simply, can we understand our team members of the team that we're part of? Can we map the team on a grid, understand where they are, understand how to communicate and work effectively, understand their strengths and weaknesses, and then can we go and do it for our own teams, the people who report to us? Can we do that exercise? And that was a really good exercise, actually. And then the last one we had was all around working in a distributed way, and that really referenced what I said earlier, the whole area of stress. So understanding the ideal environment for individuals, what engaged and what disengaged and what motivates them. And how to build on positive strategies to mitigate the negatives. Whatever they were experiencing, how could they build strategies to turn those negatives into positives and take control of their stress? And one thing we did do, and I'm going to give you this at the end, we encourage them to use the working from home report. So I'm going to put a link in the chat box at the very end of the webinar. And it's a report that's free. It basically gives you your primary behavioral style, and it gives you a little self-debriefing guide that goes with it. And I encourage you to take it and use it and give it to everybody you know on the planet. And we encourage them to do that with their family, so that they could actually understand their family members better and how they could work and interact with them. So it's really helpful, and I recommend it to you. So over this program was delivered over about 5 to 6 weeks, and you can see a lot of ground was covered in that period. I mean, Carl-Anne, I mentioned the whole area of the coaching and the debriefing and how important that actually was in the program. In fact, you'll see in the feedback, which I'll be talking about feedback in a few minutes. You'll see the feedback that people commented on this, how incredibly important that debriefing part was. Perhaps you might, if you'd be good enough, walk us through it and tell us a little bit about what happened there, how it worked, what your experience was, and the feedback you got from participants on it.
Yeah, thanks, Porrick. And I suppose what was most useful was that the individual participants had already met the coach. So in my case, in the programs I was involved with you, they knew me already. They'd seen us interacting, and that was a great starting point. So we met for 90 minutes, and during that time, we looked at their own individual reports. Each participant was asked to self-debrief before they came to the meeting with me, which meant that we could spend some really valuable time drilling down into particular issues that they may be experiencing in work, or maybe want to explore or build new strategies for interacting with people at work. So that one-to-one time was really useful because it certainly addressed the first pillar, which Breda referred to, which was understanding yourself. But as the session progressed, we guided people to start to appreciate the difference in others, to understand how the individual style could impact other people at work, and possibly how to make very slight adaptations in their behavior in order to have more meaningful or more successful interactions. And I would say in every instance, people were able to figure out how to improve a frustrating or a challenging relationship that they may have had with somebody at work, or an external stakeholder, or colleague in another department. And so it was really valuable. We used a coach approach. So we asked searching questions of the participants, so that it wasn't a telling situation. It was an exploratory conversation. And it was really useful to actually be able to draw on our interaction, Porrick.
I remember this, Carla. There was a lot of feedback. So we obviously played our roles. I won't say that we exaggerated, but we did exaggerate a bit our styles. So they would see the different behaviors, different driving forces, and we use ourselves as role models, didn't we, in it? And tell me how people experience that in terms of when you were coaching them. What did they say?
So, if people brought up a particular scenario, or if I was explaining a particular point, or even asking a searching question, I would use the opportunity to say, that's how I've asked the question or made the point. But if Porrick was here, this is how he'd do it. Yeah. And I would adopt your style, and I would give a very different and more direct approach, which usually elicited laughter. And most people were actually quite relieved to have me coaching them rather than you, Porrick.
Yeah, no, for sure. But it's interesting, if you stop for a moment and just reflect on this, you don't want to make this too serious. So we try to keep it light. But you do want people to have a sense of, hold on a second, there's no good or bad. There's no right or wrong. There just is difference. And the question then is, where is this difference valuable? How can this difference be used for success at an individual level and at a team level? And that's really what we want them to see, that, for example, I was good on my feet, if you wish, in the workshops. You were really good one-on-one in the coaching, but equally, even in the workshops, you could see my style was high energy and started moving very quickly, whereas you'd interrupt me and correct me. So you'd very nice say, excuse me, Porrick, or just a moment, Porrick, and you'd say something, and you say it in a very structured way, and so on and so forth. And they could see the different styles at work, and they could see the value of these. And I know the feedback I got on that was very important. Breda, have you any thoughts on this, generally on the feedback that you got in ICOS from the companies that we worked with?
Yeah, the feedback was really positive all around, and I think they really enjoyed seeing the two styles, the very, very different styles, now that they had learned about what the styles were. And it made huge change. And you'll see from the feedback that you're going to share that that people really took this on board in their organization, and it has made it a live learning, something that they're that they're going to continue with. It's not just that we've gone on the course, they're practicing it, and they are making it part of their organizational change.
Yeah, absolutely. Just confirm to me that in fact that you're seeing the slide, the feedback slide. I just popped up. Are you seeing it?
There it is. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Okay. Well, let's just talk about this for a moment. So in terms of feedback, and it's sort of interesting to see what people found valuable in the program. So the first question was, we asked them, what was the most useful part of the training for you? And the things they said, where you can see them, I'm not going to read them out, you can see them for yourself. They found the one-on-one to be an excellent part. And I think what Caroline said earlier, the idea of positioning stuff, they did the assessment, they did self-debrief, and then they had this one-on-one. So they came into the workshops very strong. They came into the workshops with quite a solid understanding of themselves and of the sciences in general. They didn't come in and spend the first workshop or the first 2 or 3 hours trying to understand what's going on. They already had a really good understanding. And when we started working the workshop and they saw the different styles of their team members, they understood what they were looking at. And I think that was this was really, really an important element of it. Communication with behavioral styles. I mean, we had so many laughs in the workshop around this, of people talking about not just the styles of the team, but other people outside the team that they worked with, and understanding how to work with them. And that was people really thought that was a useful part of the training. And in fact, even now, I'll be showing you a clip in a moment of somebody that we worked with a year ago or a year and a half ago. And they're talking about how they still, right now, they still have these conversations. Do you remember so-and-so? And that's clearly this, that, and the other happening. We should communicate with the person this way, or we should do that, or we should do that. So that was very, very positive. And I think this one is very important, taking time out to understand how the team should communicate with each other. The very fact of working together, we all know the the fact the Hawthorne effect, you know, the fact that we pay attention to the team, doesn't really matter what we do, the fact that we're doing something with them raises the whole level of efficacy and performance and so on. But if people said this, that taking time out, they rarely took time out. Taking time out to actually understand the team, how to communicate, and having these conversations, and what were the driving forces, what did the thing people about. They never had this conversation before, ever. And people found this to be really, really useful. The second question we asked them was, as a result of the training, what ideas or actions would you take back to your workplace? So what were you going to do differently, basically? And people, you can see them there, I hope to better relationships. Not to take things personally. This was a huge one in the conversation with people, that they learned, hang on a second, this is Porrick, for example, just being high D, high resourceful. Or this is Carl Ann being high S and whatever. You know, they understood this. Or this is Breda being what they understood this. It's not personal. Like Porrick's not giving me a hard time. Porrick's just being Porrick. Or Carl Ann's not just sitting there thinking of another question. She's actually listening attentively, and so on and so forth. So you have to understand what was going on, and not to take things personally. And that was, I think, was a big learning for everybody, to be able to detach, to be able to separate themselves from what was happening. And at the level of emotional intelligence, of course, this is hugely important as well. The people have the capacity to detach, to realize, hang on a second, what somebody says or does has nothing to do with me. It's just a reflection of their own or projection of their own reality. And they had this understanding that this is what was going on. I think that was a huge one for people. And the idea of, I would think more about the actual personal communication. We gave the example of having your behavior and driving force profiles stuck up on the door of your office or stuck up on your desk. So when people approach you, they say, hang on a second, I need to remember who I'm talking to. In fact, we have a little thing called the disc cube. And the interesting thing about the disc cube, I have one there. Let me see, I do. The interesting thing about a disc cube, which is really sort of funny, is when you do your own behavioral style on it, the one on the other side is your opposite. So if you have your own behavioral style on the cube, it's facing out to somebody. When they approach the desk, they see you and they say, oh, I must remember the behavioral style or the driving force, whatever. But you equally are looking at the back of the cube and you're looking at your opposite. You're saying, hang on a second, how do I need to communicate with somebody who's very, very different to me? And the people really enjoyed, I think, that understanding, I think, was hugely important. We're able to think about an individual and say, how will I communicate with that individual? Huge learning for them. And the last thing about the whole thing of setting aside time as a team, to talk about things like how do we communicate, how do we work together, and so on. And that was actually really, really good. Have you anything, Carl Ann or Breda, either one of you, and you want to add to this?
Yeah, what I'd like to add is that really the whole purpose of this and the building team dynamics and the artistry involved in all of that is enabling people to bring their whole selves to work, and to be at work fearlessly, not thinking that they should be more of this or more of that, that they can actually understand themselves, understand others. The biggest takeaway in all of the sessions that I had was that key thing of not taking things personally. And when we helped people to understand that it's just that people are different, there's no agenda behind it, it's just a difference, it really was truly liberating. And we saw even in the team sessions that followed, that the engagement and fun and interaction and even pushing boundaries playfully with each other a little bit more than they had previously. It was wonderful to see it evolve.
Yeah, it was. I noticed a lot of that. You could see as the program proceeded and how it all changed, and people began to become more aware and to recognize it. And we're actually able to work more effectively and even joke about particular styles and the other person not take offense and so on and so forth. It was a huge step up. I actually spoke to Siobhan Dooley. She's the Group Chief Financial Officer at FRS Nextworks. I spoke to her about 10 days ago. I wanted to see somebody who had taken the program. I thought it was a year ago. She said it was a year and a half ago. And I wanted to ask her about the impact. And so I'm going to play this for you and just hear what Siobhan has to say.
The year before we engaged with the program, we'd done a little bit of work with the team. I'd arranged some training with the team on, I think it was Pace Palette. So we delved into, team dynamics and working together and different styles and so on. And I suppose lucky enough to have a very good performing team. So I thought there was an
Well,
opportunity.
I can say that straight off. Having worked with the team, I can say straight off, it is a high performing team, isn't it?
Yeah, very, very, everybody carries their weight and supports one another and gets on very well. So I suppose, I feel, but I also believe there's always an opportunity for us all to improve ourselves, and therefore maybe there was scope to improve the dynamic. But I felt even though there was no issue driving the training need, I suppose ICOS have supported us with training all along, and the availability of that and the support of it and the constant conversation about it keeps training on the agenda, which is a really positive impact of that, being a member there, and of the I suppose the resources they make available to us.
Yeah.
And I suppose I always believe in trying to make things, continually improving things, whether it's how we do things in our finance roles or how we work together. But we hadn't done anything like this. And I suppose my background in...
Sorry, guys.
The year before we engaged with the program, we'd done a little bit of work with some of the IT aspects. I felt we previously hadn't given enough time to the personal aspects, and I felt that a program like this offered not just the potential for helping people improve work relationships, but it gave them as a personal dimension. You know, it wasn't just about the work environment. It transcends all aspects of somebody's life and understanding and development and maturity. Would have had reservations about how well it might go down, or how acceptable or how comfortable people might be, and was absolutely blown away with the positive response in terms of the willingness to engage when I put the feelers out there. And that was, I was absolutely delighted then to be in a position to offer it to the group, because it wouldn't have been anything like as successful if only half the group were interested in attending.
Yeah. You need everybody to participate. I remember that. I remember the sessions well. There were good sessions.
Excellent.
So tell me what happened on the program, and specifically, like, what impact do you think it had on the team, and what part of the program had an impact? So they had their own assessments and they had their own self debrief. Then they had a debriefing from a coach, and then they actually had workshops they attended. So there was quite a bit of different things that played there. Can you tell me a little bit what happened and what what worked, what didn't work, what you thought was successful or otherwise?
Yeah, the debriefing for people, the one-to-one, I think first of all, people were very positive about the opportunity, and they saw it as an opportunity for development.
Okay.
And they were very engaged. So they came to it very positively. The one-to-one debriefing seemed to have gone down very, very well with people. In terms of what I hear back, I suppose as recently as a few weeks ago, somebody on the team referred to, do you remember, we were trying to communicate with a person who isn't on our team, and we were talking about how we would communicate this proposal. And they said, well, remember now, they are such and such a type of person, so they'll want it nice and short and brief. And I thought, yes, a year and a half later, it's so live, the learning is still there, people are using it. I suppose the nature of our work, we often, because it's finance, it's compliance oriented, quite, and restricted, we don't always get to tell good news, so, giving people the confidence to communicate, I think, was a huge part. I'm not aware of any negatives that came from the program, nothing, only positive feedback.
Now that was really good. It was great to talk to Siobhan, because to see somebody saying a year and a half later, that had a really, really positive effect on the team, that they learned, they remembered, they were practicing it. It was alive and real. I just found that, I don't know if you found that encouraging, Breda or Carlan. I found it hugely encouraging when I had a long call with her. I just took a snippet out of it, and sorry for the mix up in the middle of it. But I just took a snippet out of the call. The call was about 45 minutes. It was just wonderful listening to her telling me about all the things that they'd done. But I wanted to give you a sense of the kind of feedback that we were getting on this and the impact that it had. Any thoughts, guys?
Yeah, it was really good to hear Siobhan as well talking about keeping the learning live. Because as I said earlier, it is about practice. That when you learn this, it's about constant practice. So it's great, as you say, a year and a half later, you're doing that interview with her, and it's live in their organization. I'm sure it is in the others we've delivered to as well.
Yeah, well, Siobhan, of course, Siobhan is sort of wonderful because she's a really good leader, and she's already been doing a lot of things with her team. I mean, the minute you met her team, you knew that good things were happening there. So I mean, we were just adding to something that was good that was already happening. But it was nice feedback. Any thoughts, Caroline?
Yeah, I think the structure of the program lends itself very well to embedding the learning, and it gives the participants time to practice it. Because very often when people do profiles like this, they get it, they read it, they get a debrief session, and you know, maybe think about it again or maybe not. But this was a live program, and people got the opportunity, and even, you know, in our opening sessions at the next workshop, people had the opportunity to say, you know, what worked in the last couple of weeks since we last met. So it was embedded real time.
Yeah. I think that's actually, it's funny. I think that's the critical point, isn't it, Caroline? That is the critical point. And it's interesting. I think Breda was strongly of the view that you need to have separate people, separate styles, and people need to experience them, and the appropriate styles for the appropriate parts of the program. But I think also the idea of spreading it out over a period of time. So it wasn't done like in one day. They were, excuse me, they had a setup session where they introduced the sciences and basically and given a sort of comprehensive participant guide and cheat sheet or whatever. And then did the opportunity to have the self debrief, do the assessment, do the self debrief, then have a debrief with you, and then go into workshop, all spread like a week or 2 weeks apart, each element. So there was an opportunity to process the information, because there's different people learn different ways, opportunity to process information, opportunity to apply it. And I think your point, Bria, about practice, and practice is the key. So there's an opportunity to actually practice it. And we noticed this every time we came back to it, the next session. There were 2-hour sessions. You knew that they'd practice. They talked about what they'd done, and we gave them home assignments, things to do to actually practice, and that worked really, really well.
Yeah, so I think it's about a day in total, isn't it? The time that's spent on the program. But the way Breda structured it, and Breda, you can speak to this, but the idea that you know, people were at home. Some of them were in the office, but people were mostly at home. So there's a lot of pressures on people. So nobody was asked to come to a day workshop that they possibly didn't really want to be at. So it was very attractive to come for 2 hours, go away, practice, and come together again in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, I think that's really important, to give them the time in between, you know, because it's a lot of information, you know, it's a lot of learning.
That's it. That's it. That's Breda. And it's funny. We all suffer from the sin of knowledge. We don't realize that a lot of the stuff that we're introducing to people is brand new, and you have to create the space to allow them to absorb this information and understand the language and so on. But okay, I want to just quickly, I'm just going to pop back to my screen share for a moment, and I hope I'm doing the right one. I'm never sure if I'm doing the right one or not when I click these up. Have I got the slide up here? Yeah.
There it is. Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to pop up a poll, guys. So now, I've launched the poll, and what I'm really saying is, can you tell us who's who? So you have A, B, and C. So is Breda A, B, or C? Caroline A, B, or C? And am I A, B, and C? So all you do is click the one that you think is the right one, and we'll see how well you understand our sciences. Oh yeah. Okay, so what do we got here? That's, boy, almost everybody's right. It's very good. It's hilarious. Okay, just to make sure a few more, waiting for a few more to fill it in here. So the current scores are, people are saying Breda is A. The majority are saying Breda is A. And Caroline is B. And Porrick is C. This is the current scoring. And okay, I'll end the poll. I've got enough scores here. And so there's the results. You can all see them. So what do you think? You're right. So Breda, yeah. So you're right. So Breda is A. So Caroline is B and I'm C. So you can see the different styles, the behavior style and the driving forces. And here are the questions. Do you think, did we understand our individual strengths? Did we play to the strengths in this webinar? Did we play to the strengths, you think, in the actual program itself? Do you see how the art and science of team dynamics and how the tools used here can be used to improve your team remotely or in a place of work? So I hope you can, and I hope that that's clear to you. Now, what I'd like to do is, I'd like to go very simply. I'm going to just grab something here. I'd like to go to a Q&A and ask anybody. I don't know if you have any questions have come in there, Caroline. While you're looking at the first question, I'm just going to pop into to everybody and so you can get everybody in the meeting. I'm going to pop in the link to the working from home report. So it's in there for you. It's free. It's free. Okay, it's free. Give it to everybody you know and let them do it and let them get a little insight into their behavior. It's just a primary behavioral style, but there's a little debriefing guide as well. That's all around how do you work remotely, given your style, and how do you communicate with others, given your style and given other style. So it's a nice little exercise to do. So just before I go to questions, Caroline, I do want to say that we have another webinar coming up. The webinar is coming up on the 2nd of December at 10 o'clock. And the webinar is with Derek Keeley, Choosing Resilience in the Workplace. And I like this quote: "I'm not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." C. Young. So Carl Jung. Resilience is the one ability to respond and adapt to the pressure of daily life. It's not a passive or intrinsic characteristic. It's an active process we need to engage with. And we may all approach it differently. We all find our strength in different ways. And in this webinar coming up, we're going to look at why resilience is so important in our children, and really simple ways, great ways to build resilience. So Caroline, questions on today? What do you have?
Well, I do have a question, but before I read the question, I must acknowledge that Ronan very quickly at 10:10 this morning predicted who the profiles belonged to. He did ask what the prize was, Porrick. He did ask what the prize was, but he got it right straight off.
You got the prize. I'm like Gay Byrne. There was one for everybody in the audience.
So we have a question here, which is, when people's motivators are very different, how can you bring them around to what you believe is a better way relative to the job? So that would be, so for example, with new methods versus traditional ways. Okay,
hard question, Caroline. The answer to it is very simple, actually. So first, let's look at behaviors and motivators just for a moment at the idea and ask yourself the question: do they change? And people will say, yeah, they can change. For example, behaviors, we can adapt our behavioral style regularly, and we do it. We do it every minute, every hour. We do it for extended periods of time with different people, different circumstances. We behave out of character, if you wish. We say we tend to behave a natural way when everything's going swimmingly, and when you know what hits the fan, we revert to type. And in between, we're adapting all the time. And that's quite natural and quite normal. Whether behaviors change entirely, whether you can actually change them, I don't believe they can, personally. I mean, they say they can. They say big life-changing experience can affect your behavior and they change. That's not been my experience. My experience is you learn, you mature, and you develop your EQ. And in developing your EQ, you learn that you find it's easier to adapt. So in learning your EQ, you find it easier to adapt and modify your behaviors for circumstances and for people. But I don't think they actually change. Regarding driving force or motivators, I don't think they change at all. And I'm going to give you and I'll answer your question in a moment. And I'm going to give an example. I worked with a guy once who made a lot of money, and he decided with all the money he wanted to give it away. And people used to think he was very altruistic. What a wonderful man. And he was a wonderful man. He was a beautiful man, incredible man. But if you saw the way he gave away the money, It was the most high resourceful giving away of money I ever saw in my life. It was all about bang for the buck. And in the organization, we used to say things like, the enemy of the great is the good. There's lots of good things we could do, but we were looking for great things to do, the highest and best use of the resource available to us. So it's all resourceful. It was all about the highest and best return on investment, return on the money that was given away. And so even though the person behaved differently, was doing different things, the driving forces were still the same. So to answer your question, I know it's a long-winded answer to your question, but that's me, isn't it? To answer your question, the way you do this is, number one, you realize that the driving force is not going to change. It is what it is. This is the person. The question is, how do you engage the core driving forces to affect what you want to happen? So, for example, somebody who is structured, who says, I have found a system for living, a way of doing things. This is the way I do it. I've always done it. I rely on past experience. I rely on proven methods and systems and so on. How do you get them to go to the other place where it's all about new ideas in creative ways? Well, you have to use a structured driving force to get them to do that. So you say something to them like, one of the ways you need to build into your way of doing things is that you're always exploring new ideas. So part of the system that you've built, the way you do things, your experiences, I am regularly going to assign an hour a day or a half an hour a day or half a day a week with my team to brainstorm new and better ways, which I will then incorporate into my system. So you use the structure. I always tell the behavioral story. You know my story about driving the car very fast in a scurry, driving down towards Power School, down that winding road and overtaking the car dangerously. Very, very dangerously. And he'd flashing his lights at me and following me in an old car with Dublin Reg number plates, or falling apart car. And I said, it's an undercover police officer. And he indicated, his flashing light, he was indicating, so I pulled in, he pulled in behind me at the entrance to Rowan's estate down there in Enniskerry. And he got out of the car and he walked up to me, and I was all ready. I was ready for the fight and whatever, and the high D. And he knocked on the window and he smiled at me, which was quite disarming. I hadn't expected that. I expected aggression. And he did this. I rolled down my window and he said to me, excuse me, sir. He had a Northern Irish accent, actually. He said to me, excuse me, sir. That completely disarmed me. I didn't know what was coming next. And this is what he said to me. He said, is it in you to acknowledge that what you did was reckless? Now, he recognized as somebody who would overtake that was probably a high D, probably a certain kind of driving force, a certain kind of commanding, whatever. He saw a certain kind of profile, and he understood it well enough that he could come down to me and say to me, challenge me, say, is it in you to acknowledge that what you did was reckless? Knowing that the high D, I have two choices. Either I can say, no, it's not in me, which I'm never going to say because I'm high D, and I'm always going to say, of course it's in me, I'm strong and I'm powerful and whatever. And by making me do that, I then acknowledged that what I did was reckless. And I learned, I said, yeah, what I did was reckless. Incredibly powerful. It was a great one. I think one of the most profound experiences I had of somebody using something in the most positive way. So if that's the way you do it, that was a behavioral issue, of course, it wasn't a driving force issue, but that's how you do it. You use the strength, the behavior, the driving force strength, you use that to find a way to engage the person the way you want to engage them. But they don't change. You just use them differently. Long-winded answer, but there you go. You asked the question.
Great, thanks, Porrick. We do have another question here. So, the presentation is appreciated, and I'm interested in an example of the sort of exercises you gave people to do at home after the team presentation.
Yeah, I mean, here's a simple one. I'll give you one simple one. Excuse me. What is the value I bring? So we gave an exercise and said, can you describe yourself? Can you understand yourself? And then you can say, this is the value I bring to the team. And then having done that exercise, so it was an exercise they did, and then coming to the team, they presented the value that they believed they brought to the team. The team then gave them feedback on the value they believed they brought. The person acknowledged that and then made certain commitments of what they would do. So and then they went away, and then we took that exercise and they did an exercise on that exercise, particular things they were going to do between that and the next session. And then we came back to the session, they fed backwards. So we have lots of these really simple. The secret, I think actually one of the successes of the program, in answer to the person who asked the question, was we kept it really simple. It was really simple. We didn't have 20, they weren't going away doing 20 things. They went away and did 1 or 2 things. That was it. And but they were well researched, they were well thought out, and they were built into the program. So they did the exercise. For example, the value I bring exercise was introduced to them in the participant guide, then discussed with them when they'd done their debriefing with you. You did the exercise with them. They then went away and did workouts on their own. They then presented in the first workshop, got feedback in the workshop, went away and did another piece of work and got feedback again. So it's the exercises, what's what I'm looking for? They sort of pulled the program together and they carried through different steps of the program. But they were simple. We only had 2 or 3 exercises that people actually did. And again, I'm happy to share them. If anybody wants to email us, just email us. I'm happy to share the program and the exercises with them.
Can I add to that, actually, because when we did it in the pilot, I found this a really positive experience, because we spoke about the value we brought, but when our colleagues actually spoke about the value we each brought, it was really great to hear some additional values that your colleagues felt that you had as well. I mean, that was very, very positive.
Yeah, this is interesting, Breda. You know, yeah. I often say to people that they don't recognize, they don't acknowledge themselves the value they bring. Do you know why? Because typically where they bring value is something that is natural to them. It comes easily to them. And they think everybody can do it, or everybody does the same thing. And as a consequence, they don't value it. They say, well, sure, anybody could do this. Well, the truth is, of course, anybody couldn't do this, or anybody could be like this. Well, the truth is, anybody couldn't be like this. And they don't value the consequence. So going through that feedback exercise, I think, Breda, is huge. I'm always amazed when we do it. And when people say, well, actually, that's really interesting that you said that, Mary or Joe or Mick. But in fact, are you aware of that? And they say something, the person goes, God, I never knew that. Should I just do that all the time? Should I do that with everybody? They say, yeah, and it's wonderful. And that's really valuable for the team. So I think you're right. That was a huge learning for people. That feedback exercise was really, really important.
Yeah, it was a really positive experience for people. Yeah.
Okay, so
one more question.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
If you have there. So is there a similarity between the insights model and the Honey and Mumford learning styles, being activist, reflector, pragmatist, and theorist?
No.
There's the ID.
There's the correct answer, folks.
But I'm glad the question was asked, because I want to answer a different question as a consequence. It's really important when one's looking at psychometric assessments or any tool to be very, very clear about what one is measuring. This is really, really important. So that was a really good question, because I often see people who, for example, who are familiar with a DISC model, ours or somebody else's, or they're familiar with a Myers-Briggs model, or they're familiar with 16 PM or whatever. And I see them using them inappropriately. They're using them in a way they weren't designed. They're pretending that they've measured something they haven't actually measured. So the DISC profile, the behavioral profile, is measuring how do I, and the 4 areas it measures are how do I deal with, or how do I engage with problems and challenges, people and context, pace, consistency, procedures and constraints. How do I do particular things? Motivators measuring why, what are the things I value? Why do I engage or disengage? What are the filters through which I see the world? So I'm commanding, intentional, receptive, resourceful, and so on and so forth. So I want to be in control of my destiny. I want to return on investment. So it's measuring very specific things. I'm D, I lean into a problem and challenge. You know, I'm I above the line, I'm engaged, I'm gregarious. And so it's measuring particular things. And you need to be really precise. Bill Bonstetter, the founder of TTI, used to always say this: we need to be very precise about what we're measuring. So we're doing an X-ray, we're doing a CAT scan, we're doing an MRI, we're doing a blood test, we're doing whatever. It's different slices of the person, but that's all it is. And nobody would say that the X-ray is the CAT scan, and the CAT scan is the MRI is the blood test. They're not. They're different things that measure different. Now, there may be overlap. For sure, there may be overlap. So, for example, you will often see somebody with a particular style, behavioral style, or has a particular learning style that fits in. So, for example, I think by talking. I think by talking. I think by drawing. I don't think by writing. I'm very poor, right? So, I learn by talking. This is how I do. So different people, so there are overlaps. So the high Ds and the high Is tends to be more, they're engaged, and the secret of them is to record and so different people do things different ways, and there are overlaps between them, or correlations or congruence, or whatever you want to say between them, but they are measuring different things. I'm just conscious of the time. It's 11 o'clock on the button. So I'd like to thank you very much, Breda and Caroline, for being here. For participating in the workshop, and I hope everybody enjoyed it. We have recorded this. The recording will be available. We'll be sending it out to everybody, posting up on LinkedIn or whatever, so you'll all have access to it. And with that, I bid you all adieu. Thank you very much
for taking part. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.